Hello and welcome to the Full Potential Living podcast. I am your host, Coach Eric Ferguson. In this podcast, it is our mission to help you self-actualize to your fullest potential in this lifetime. In particular, living a full potential life is about 4 areas: being fulfilled, enjoying your life along the journey, being your truest and best self, having a level of success that provides significant value from a place of service to the world. Number 3, generational impact, not just thinking about the people around you, but impacting the next generation. And number 4, a higher level of consciousness, developing your mind, developing your consciousness to a higher level so you can live a better life. In this podcast, we'll be talking about these topics and many more that help you self-actualize. Today, I have a very special guest and good friend, Faisal Ensaun. Faisal Ensaun immigrated from a war-torn country, overcame addiction, and transformed deep personal challenges into a life of purpose, success, impact, and fulfillment. As a certified high-performance coach and business coach since 2015, Faisal has worked with over 2,000 individuals, students, parents, CEOs, and multi-millionaires, helping them unlock their full potential and connect with their vision. He's a co-founder of the Coaching Mastery Community and leads the CMI Coaching and Mentoring Mastermind, where he empowers multifamily investors and entrepreneurs to elevate their performance and build thriving organizations. Not only that, my man Faisal is a devoted husband, father of 2 daughters, and a passionate adventurer. Faisal spends his time traveling the world with his family, connecting with nature, and helping others grow. His mission is simple yet powerful: to help individuals, families, and communities create better lives and brighter futures. Faisal, welcome to the show, my man.
Excited to be here. Thank you for the intro.
Yes. Well, dude, you've really, it's been awesome connecting with you over the last, 6 months roughly, and really helped me in my own coaching journey. And so I'm just super excited to talk with you today and provide value for the world. So thanks so much for being on, man.
So excited to be here, and it's been an honor to connect with you as well, Eric.
Awesome. Laying the foundation for the conversation for people to get to know you a little more. So, I mentioned you came from a war-torn country, and where you are today is an extraordinary place from where you were, especially. Can you share a little bit about your background and like a pivotal moment where you really realized that you could go from struggling to living a more extraordinary life of purpose and passion?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. It always takes me back to one moment that I've thought about a lot over the years. And it was actually not because I migrated from a war-torn country to a different country. It was actually more around me struggling with my own system. And I will connect back to that, the migration as well. But I always go back to this moment that was coming out of a subway station, and it was in Toronto region. I was coming out. I was in my early 20s. I was young. I had a lot of potential, so to say. I didn't believe that at the time. But as I was coming out, I felt like I had the body of a 90-year-old man. And I went to the corner. I felt sick. I felt weak. And I just watched people kind of pass me by, and I just threw up on the floor, and all I see is blood there. The sad part was I wasn't even surprised by that, because I had been abusing my body for a long time. In that moment, I think that was one of the first times where I actually felt it all. I felt the physical, the emotional, the spiritual pain, all of it. And in the same breath, in the next few seconds, I also felt something else. I felt joy. I felt connection. I felt peace, which to my 20-year-old mind seemed like I was going crazy.
Wow.
But I didn't need to know the how. But what ended up happening that month, a lot of things changed. I re-enrolled myself back into college. I started staying away from the world of having fun and partying and all that stuff. And then I started becoming curious about what went wrong in the process, what led me towards addiction, what led me towards thinking about suicide, what led me towards all this disconnection from my family, my
Yeah.
values, who I am, what went wrong. And I didn't know the answer to that. So I became curious about studying anything from psychology to philosophy, spirituality, history, anything that I could get my hands on. And that process took me on an adventure for the next 10 to 15 years. And then about 10, 15 years later, I met my mentor and later on my other coaches. And I went through about a 6-month journey, and it felt like somebody completely rewired my brain and
Mm.
completely started changing the way I looked at the world. I created a different path forward. And that was about a 12 years ago or something like that, almost a decade ago. And that's when happens to be when I started my new path as a business owner, as a coach as well. And I went on this journey. And just to circle back a little bit, because I've over the years, in retrospect, I've figured out the causes behind a lot of these things as
Mm.
well.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, I came from a war-torn country, and a lot of people don't know what happens unless they've gone through it. And my case is not unique. Millions of people have gone through that process around the world, and they continue
Yeah.
to do so. And but it was actually my parents who had to leave. Like in one week they're having normal lives, the next week they have to put their clothes in their bag and just illegally cross into a different border and find a way to live in a country where they don't know the place, the culture, any of it.
What
And
country was it?
so we had to migrate into Pakistan, which is a neighboring country, and live there for a while. And having 5 kids with you and not knowing how to provide for your family, I can't even imagine what my parents went through. But growing up in that world, that was a world of survival. It was not the world of abundance or thriving or anything
Yeah.
like that. In fact, nobody had any concept of abundance in the physical material sense. There was a lot of
Yeah.
abundance in terms of love, connection, those kind of things. But growing up in that world, you kind of become used to it because that becomes your next norm. But when I came to Canada when I was 17, that's when it hit, when that big transition cultural shock that happened, because such a big difference between that side of the world and this side. It took me about 4 or 5 years to even adjust. But what I realized was there was a lot of trauma left over from the survival world that we were a part of. And I didn't know how to process it. Nobody knew around me how to process it. Everybody was in survival mode. And
Yeah.
because of the new world, it kind of just opened up that that veil. And I was shocked and I didn't know what to do. And the place that I could get away from all that pain was addiction. And addiction showed up in the
Yeah.
form of substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, and in the name of fun and partying. But I knew deep down that I wasn't having fun. I wasn't at peace. I wasn't joyful. It just looked like it on the surface.
Mm.
I was in pain. I was. I didn't know how to deal with any of that stuff, and this is why when I stepped back, I realized, oh my God, there's so much to realize. Now,
Yeah.
that might seem like an extreme story, but everybody kind of goes through a version of that story in different forms at different intensities. And people carry a lot of stuff within them that they don't know how to resolve. And then they come to a point in their life where they're like, why? I'm not happy. I'm not connected. I don't live a purposeful life. They might not say it like that, but their life feels like there's a void in there. They kind
Hmm.
of living their day by day life like a mundane thing over and over and over. And I
Yeah.
didn't want to live my life like that, to be honest. I was sick and tired of feeling miserable. I wanted to start living a life where I felt grateful, I felt connected, I felt purposeful every day. I felt excited to wake up. Even if I had pain and challenges, I was ready to deal with them. I dealt with them with honor. And that took a
Yeah.
long time to figure out. And to be honest, I didn't need to spend that long to figure it out. What helped me in the process was coaching and mentorship. And that's part of the reason why I jumped onto this path. A big part of it was still because I'm a seeker. I'm trying to understand who I am.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is I want to help other people. And when I help other people, that actually helps me as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Would you be willing to share what the addiction was? Sounds like it was pretty intense.
The addiction was, if you were to say overall, so I never considered at the time, nobody would ever say that I was addicted. And in fact, when
Hmm.
I started sharing that, a lot of people were like, you weren't addicted. Like,
Hmm.
no, that wasn't true. I had to go out every night and drink. I
Hmm.
had to go out multiple nights a week and be under drugs because I couldn't
Hmm.
function without it.
Hmm.
Not because it was the substance, but it was because I could not deal with my own thoughts and emotions.
Yeah.
So then that substance was the only thing that actually helped me. And at the
Yeah.
same time, like, so it wasn't one thing, it was actually multiple things. It was drugs, it was alcohol, it was video games, anything that would take me away from my mind
Yeah.
was the thing. So it was every day, almost every day, I was on that roller coaster. And when I would get off of it, what did I feel? I felt depressed. I felt disconnected. I felt confused. I felt purposeless. I felt a lot of void within me. So why wouldn't I want to go through? And that's why I also have empathy around a lot of people who go through that, because that's the only solution that they know. And when I found a different solution, I actually there wasn't the substance. I didn't need to touch any of that
Yeah.
stuff. Like all of it disappeared, like it didn't, like as if it didn't matter. Once I found a better way, once I dealt with the pain,
Yeah.
and to be honest, I'm not fully healed. Like when people say, "Oh, I've gone over my trauma," is there. In fact, my trauma propels me a lot of times. A
Mm.
lot of the things that I do is because of that.
Mm.
But the healing process is ongoing. But what
Yeah.
I've realized in the process is that most people are addicted to something, not because of the thing, but it's because there's something inside of them that
Mm.
they don't know how to deal with and process and actually make better use of it. And it's usually our mind. And this is why some of the oldest scriptures will say in Bhagavad Gita would say, the mind is the slayer of the real.
Yeah. It's like Maya is the illusion the mind can really
Yeah,
get in the
you can
way
really
of.
start to like my life was not even like when you look at it when we so it's so like I wasn't like that back home in the third world country, but when I came to this side of the world, I became depressed. By
Yeah.
all means, we're living 100 times better in terms of like resources and
Right.
opportunity, everything. But then why am I? And that was the mind. It wasn't that I lacked opportunity or lacked things
Mm.
to do. In fact, we had 10 times more opportunity on this side of the world, but I couldn't
Yeah.
take advantage of any of it.
Right.
But I had to deal with what was inside to be able to take advantage of what is on the outside. And most people are stuck with that to in one degree or another.
Yeah. So you're saying at one point it came from within where you're like, okay, it's not a substance or a material thing that is going to bring me more happiness, peace, joy. It's an internal thing within that
Yeah,
helped you.
and that's
You
how I
faced it.
define freedom as well with my clients as well, because a lot of my
Yeah.
clients that are investors, entrepreneurs, they'll be like, well,
Yeah.
I want freedom, and they usually look at freedom in terms of time freedom and financial freedom. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's, you need that. I need time freedom, and I need, if I don't have those two things, it's very hard to do to operate in the world, because that's how the world operates.
Yeah.
But imagine you had all the time in the world and all the money in the world, and you're miserable inside. What the hell is the point of that thing?
Right.
And I work with clients who are like that, who would give you all the money that they have if you could give them some peace,
Wow.
some joy, some connection, some purpose in their life. They will happily give you all that. But
Yeah.
there's no key for that. It's a long process. And in fact, even if they could spend money and they spend thousands of dollars, they still have to do the work internally. And what I
Yeah.
say is, I'd rather do the work now than suffer later. Like, it's hard to do the work,
Yeah.
but most people suffer in the process. They get the
Yeah.
time freedom, financial freedom. They spend a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades building that out. And when they get there, they're disconnected from their family. They're disconnected from themselves. They disconnected from their faith. Their life is meaningless to them. They're disengaged. And in the words of Alan Watts might say, is like the whiskey that they drink becomes like this bitter thing. It doesn't taste like anything. The food that they eat is whatever, even though they can buy the best food in the world. They have all the
Yeah.
houses, like nothing means anything.
Yeah.
That is being in hell.
You have everything, but you still aren't fulfilled. Going back to when you had that moment when you had thrown up blood, literally, and you started to face your fears, face your challenges and change. But for those people out there that may feel a lack of fulfillment, may feel a lack of direction for their future, overwhelmed, burned out, what like 2 or 3 things did you do that now you work with your clients on? But like, what did you do to change that at that pivotal moment?
So, I mean, the first step to all of this, and there's something I learned from this philosopher, Manly Palmer Hall, a long time ago. And he said there are two types of ignorance. One is simple ignorance. The other one is ignorance with a college degree. He's like, the latter one is the harder one to deal with. Simple ignorance is easy enough to deal with. You just don't know something and you go and learn. The latter one, the ignorance with the college degree, is most people think that they know what they're doing. They've been taught everything. And whether you have a college degree or not, we're educated in a certain way of thinking and doing things. Actually, most of what I've learned is actually not the learning of it, it's the unlearning of what I've been taught. That unlearning process is very, you know, that as a coach, the beliefs that we have internally, the thinking process, that behaviors, the things that we believe to be true, whether or not they're true, it looks real to us in our mind. It's an illusion.
Yeah.
That process is really difficult. And another philosopher might say is that the hardest thing to understand is yourself, because it's like a finger pointing at itself. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. We're always looking out this way, you know?
We're always looking out that way, right? That's an incredibly difficult process. This is why in most human cultures, there was always that idea of guru or a guide or a teacher or a coach of some kind. This is not a new concept. It's been around with us for hundreds of thousands of years. Now, the communities have broken up, so it's not within a community, just like everything else that's become compartmentalized. Now there's a huge need for mentors, guides, teachers. There's a need for spirituality. Why? Because collectively we see a void. There's a lot of material abundance, especially in the Western world, but there's not the substance. So what I would say is that unlearning process takes a long time. When I started the journey, I started learning things, but I realized as I was learning things, my cup was so full. I couldn't understand things in my experience. There's this story of I think it was a Zen master, where somebody comes to him and says, "Yeah, I want to learn from you," and is like, okay, and he starts going on about, this is what I want to learn, that's what I want to learn. And the master, like, he's listening to him, and he's about to pour a cup of tea for him, and he takes as he's talking and he's pouring a cup of tea, the master doesn't stop pouring. He just goes on, and at some point the student notices, like, stop. It's like the tea's going. It's like, that's how you are. I can't teach you until you empty that cup.
Yeah. I think I remember that. That's from a movie or something.
It's a Zen story, which probably have turned into movies on.
Yeah. Okay.
So what does that mean? That means when I started my journey, I started learning a lot of things, but I realized that I couldn't implement a lot of it. It took me about 10, 15 years to even get a handle on what I actually wanted to slowly go towards. But even that, it showed up more of a curiosity. I became curious that I didn't know anything, to be honest. And that's where my cup got empty. So the first thing would be is just know that you don't know much. I don't know much. Nobody knows much. No matter how much you've been taught, and I don't care if you have multiple PhDs, you don't know much, especially about yourself, especially the world at large. Too complex. You know about a small sliver of whatever you know, and it helps you with with that thing, and that's it. And then, so first, being open to that. Second, I would say, if I was able to go back in time, I would put all my resources in finding some kind of mentor, guide, and coach. Because, like I said in my story, it took me 15 years to get there, get to a point where I can even begin to understand where do I need to go. But then 6 months with a mentor and a coach, I could not believe what happened. Why? Because again, now he became a reflection. He wasn't telling me what to do. He was asking a lot of questions. And that discovery process of asking questions and thinking deeper and noticing things that you wouldn't otherwise notice, it's very hard to do on your own. Even now as a coach, there are parts of it I can, a lot of parts of it I can't. This is why I still hire coaches and mentors, because that process is incredibly difficult to do it on your own. Again, this is not a new thing where coaching has just come around. If you study the oldest cultures, you will see that every person who's actually trying to develop any level of awareness, they're recommended to have a guide in the process. Somebody who has walked the path, not because they will tell them what to do, but they will ask them questions. They will help them see the world with a different lens that they don't yet have.
Yeah. See the trees in the forest.
Exactly. So definitely, and especially if you're younger, especially if you're starting a path, one of the most powerful things you can do is invest in some kind of mentorship or coaching process. And those are different things, but the coaching process is that you're with somebody who is guiding you along with questions, getting you to think deeper about who you are, what you're creating, your sense of purpose, fulfillment, all the things that are important to you in your life. You need to explore all of that. Nobody can tell you what those are for you. You need
Hmm.
to explore that. And that exploration process is not taught to us. It's not part of our normal education system.
Right.
It's not part of, it has been part of some of the most powerful. It's part of the Socratic process, part of the Pythagorean process. It's part of every religion has that questioning process in it,
Yeah.
but it somehow got lost in our education system. Our education system became about teaching you certain things that you can use. It's more utilitarian.
Right.
And then even
Fitting
the
more
higher
things into your brain.
yeah, yeah, putting more information, which is useful to some degree. But then when you're talking about living out in the world, that's incredibly challenging to be in. When you're talking about living a life that's at a level where you can be joyful, you can be connected, fulfilled, purposeful, with all the challenges that are there, and it's not easy. When you're talking about creating a path forward with freedom externally and internally, it becomes a challenge. Even with people who are living just a mundane, ordinary life, you will see the only reason they can function is because they're so busy with entertainment.
Mm.
Like all you have to do is just watch what people are doing. They're always busy with something. That's how the
Yeah.
system is set up, because if they stop being entertained, they'll be miserable,
They'll be bored first. Yeah. And then,
bored, and then that pretty soon, because they will start to see what their mind is doing, they're going to go nuts because they have no training whatsoever how to deal with their own mind.
so for people out there, they can start to unlearn a lot of the things that, like, really look into your belief systems of, you know, what kind of belief systems do you have about your life, about who you are, about the world itself, and start to unpack those and then find somebody that can help you along that process. I know personally, obviously, training as a coach and being coached, and being a coach, the power of just having a dialogue for somebody who's trained to go in and see where your blind spots are. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Your acceleration of growth. I mean, I've had many coaches now, and you've been helping me as a coach, and it's like there's really, like, I've done a lot of like internal work myself. Like, I've been to India to study yoga. I've been to Nepal. I've learned about meditation. I was in Africa. I was all around Europe. I was, for a good couple of years, I was really studying myself and who I was and what I wanted out of life. I did all of that inner work, thinking deeply, contemplative work, and it helped. But there's only so much you can do by yourself. You need somebody to bounce things back, almost like a mirror. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and the power of having a mentor or a coach or a process, somebody that has a legit process, that can help you through your own problems. So it's such a powerful thing. But I want to ask you, man, I know how important like a vision is for you, and it is for me, and how much it changed my life. And like listeners have talked a lot about it. And, one thing, that's something you're deeply passionate about, creating it, refining it. I've been through some of your envisioning processes myself and living it. For those people out there feeling uncertain or stuck in that place we're talking about, how can they start crafting a vision for their life, especially in times like these?
Yeah. Before I go into that, I want to share a quick story you reminded me of that connects to what the point you made. So, one of
Mm.
my favorite couple of sessions that I've done was with a monk. I did a
Ooh,
coaching session with a monk. It was very interesting. A monk who had gone into the world, and he's doing a huge project, a multi-billion-dollar company that he
yeah.
was pushing towards, but there was a cause behind it.
Mm.
And it was interesting when I did that session with him, and it will tell you how powerful blind spot is. He was actually practicing detachment, which is a part of the Buddhist process.
Buddhism.
And he's like, I feel like I've detached from a lot of that stuff, and that's supposed to be a positive thing. It's not indifference the way most people think. It's detachment, that you're not attached to the outcome of something. You have your openness in the process. I explored. I didn't know what was going to come out of it. It was so powerful what came out of it at the end. I just reflected one thing. Like, he was doing incredible in a lot of areas, but I'm like, you know what? It seems like you have done incredible work, and you've detached from a lot of things in your life. But the one area that it's like a splinter that keeps like I can see it, and I don't know if you see it yet. I'm like, the only area it seems like you're attached to is your thinking around your religion, well, your path that you have. So he
Yeah.
was so attached to the process of Buddhism.
Mm.
That's
So
your
you were
attachment.
coaching him.
I was coaching him. Like,
Oh,
it seems like that's your attachment. As soon as I said it, it's like one of those things that he didn't want to admit. He's like, that's true. He's like, the only thing that I'm attached to is that because that's the only thing that has helped me.
mm. Mm.
But
Interesting.
in the same breath, he said that I also know that that's my journey to get detached in that process too.
Oh, okay.
But that opened, I know that opened them up to a whole other exploration. But now think about a blind spot, like somebody who's done all of that work for a long
Yeah.
time does not
Right.
see. And it's not like I know more than his religion or path,
Right.
or
Right.
I just know to reflect back something
Right.
that he is not seeing in the process. Just wanted to share that. It just reminded me of that.
Well, a coach is a mirror to you because we're always looking out, and somebody is that mirror reflecting back that you're going, oh, that's
Yeah.
what I look like inside. That's what's holding
Yeah.
me back. That's my blind spot. So now you can become aware and then start to unpack it and then change it. I love that
So, well,
analogy.
okay, I'll share one more story that's more of a funny story. I was with so I had a session with a medical doctor. He was a doctor. He was a like very successful person, and
Yeah.
he was going in towards the investing path. He was struggling with a lot of the things. So he did a session with me, and I didn't know this, but when I was doing the session, it was a 90-minute session. We went through the process. There were a couple of key insights he realized, and he had a little bit of an arrogance to him. So, but it hit him as soon as he realized it. When I asked him that, his first thought was, "Why the hell didn't I come up with this?" And
That he
he
was
was actually
arrogant.
frustrated. He was actually frustrated. He's like, I don't know why I didn't come up with that myself. It was right in front of his face, but he couldn't see it. But then he kind of stopped and he looked. He started laughing. I was like, "What's going on?" It's like my wife is sitting across the room. She's laughing.
She's like, I've seen this the whole time.
She's like, he needs to get that medicine. But in any case, but it was just so I found that so. But he was actually humble enough to say, like, this I would have never seen this.
Right.
But anyway, we can move on now.
That's so funny. And I just want to preface, I feel like the reason I asked that question about the vision, I just want to kind of provide a little context, is we are in a time where we just transitioned, politically to a new beginning. And I'm not here to talk about politics today, but I'm here to help people look forward to the future so that we can create a better world that's not so divisive, because there's so much divisiveness going on right now. And so I know there are specific tools and things and I know a vision is one of those powerful tools. And I'm curious how you have developed your vision and how it helped you go from where you were to where you are now and how it helps your clients.
Yeah, and I stumbled across this partly because I started developing a vision myself, and I didn't call it that in the beginning. I just had this vision or this dream or this picture, and I remember this was about 11 years or so ago, where I used to go to work back and forth, and every morning when I would wake up, I couldn't stop picturing myself on stage in front of people,
Hmm.
like just talking to them. But here's a weird thing: I was not a speaker. In fact, I
Hmm.
struggled to speak one on one with a lot of people. I would
Hmm.
not be the kind of person who would go and share very in my own corner, my like the things that I'm. It will sound odd to people, but like I would never share anything. I would be like the quietest person in the room doing my own
Yeah.
thing.
The Buddha.
Very much more so on the introverted side as well. And
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of person who would be on stage and talking to people. So to me, it looked very ridiculous. I'm like, what the
Yeah.
hell is this? And I couldn't shake it off. All I could see was that picture.
Yeah.
And along with that picture, I also had these visions of just being in nature more, being traveling. At the time I was with my wife, we had recently gotten married, and just being free and going exploring the world and learning from each other. And I actually had a vision of just staying in a library for a month and just reading and studying and just going through, like, that's still one of those things that I want to do for a month,
Hmm.
where we would be in a library all day, and then and then some of the days we would just go and explore the culture, connect with people, and go back and just do that for a month, and just have discussions around the things that we were learning, anything, like the biggest library we could find.
Hmm. Sounds like a monk, like going into a cave.
Yeah, it felt like that. And then just being in nature and doing all
Yeah.
sorts of
Yeah.
things and just meeting cool people in the
It sounds
process.
fun.
Like I would get pictures like that, and it was, but my life was fairly mundane. It was like, and I didn't see a way out of that. I was like, how, like that? None of this stuff makes any sense. None of this stuff is practical. But that vision wouldn't
Yeah.
leave me alone. Every day I would wake up with something like that. But then eventually I got so miserable. I remember I used to take my wife to these camping trips. As soon as weekend would hit, I'm like, especially in summertime here in Canada, be like, we're going. And later on, she confessed that she hated those trips, but I thought she liked them too at the time. But mostly because of the way, like I was so disorganized, I just wanted to get the hell out of there,
She's like,
get the hell out of the
Faisal.
city. And here, my sanctuary was nature and just sitting in front of the fire. I remember she would go to sleep at around midnight or something, and I would just sit there up until 4 or 5 in the morning. I would just be just in front of that fire. But that process, to me, that was process of meditation. I didn't know that was, I wasn't looking at
Yeah.
it as a meditation,
Right.
but it helped me connect to a very different part of myself, and it started to create this, maybe there is something to this vision.
Mm.
Maybe there is something to this thing. Maybe it is, but it created an opening. And then
Mm.
later on, as I decided to move forward, and that also actually got me to start noticing other opportunities. And one of the first people that came in front of me around that was Brennan Burchard. I saw him on YouTube. He's like, "You can do this thing." I'm like, "Holy shit, I can do that thing. Let me learn more." And then that just opened up the door to a
Yeah.
whole other world based
Yeah.
on that. I'm like, okay. And the funny
Yes.
thing is, that was connected to the exact same thing because he was teaching people how to speak on stage. I'm like, I don't want to speak on stage, but he's talking about other things. But it ended up being this. A few years
Yeah.
later, I'm speaking on stage.
And now you do that.
Now I do that, which is still so surreal and odd to me and weird. But the thing that I started realizing is that I thought this was just a normal process, but most people doesn't, and they have visions, but just like me, they would discount it. They would be like, no, that's not practical. That's not real. That's not that. But now, fast forward to now, I would guess anybody who is, most people who are in the personal development world, they've heard of vision boards and all that stuff. So it's become more of a pop culture thing. And most people that come to me, they're like, "Oh, I already have a vision board." I'm like, "Okay, keep that vision board. Let's do the
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Let's go deeper." And you've done
Right.
some of that. But the problem is that when people take a vision board, they slap a bunch of pictures. Usually they're materialistic stuff that they put on it.
Right.
It doesn't matter. I don't have a
Red
judgment.
car,
What,
big
like
house.
a car, house, this, and but the problem is that they haven't done the deeper work to understand what that vision is and how it's connected to them, their story, what matters to them
Right.
deeply.
Why?
When you do that deeper work around your identity, around your contribution, the experiences, who you're becoming in the process, your faith, your values, your why, you begin to see a very different picture. Recently, one of my clients, so I'm going through this process called 10x Year 2025, where I take people through a vision, build a strategic goal setting process, get them to learn how they can communicate, and I coach them through that process.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a mini group coaching a couple of times a year. This is the second time around I'm doing it. One of my clients, he shared this specific thing. He's like, before I got in the program with you, I had a vision board. I had all these things, but he's like, it was a weird how my vision board has completely shifted. Is like the old, and he literally showed them side by side. He's like, look at my older vision board. It has cars, houses, all this stuff. Look
Yeah.
at my new vision board. Most of them, and most of his vision board had people in it. For one thing, he was looking for relationships, and it had his sense of purpose, wanting to serve people and connect with people. It had his some of his real estate stuff in it. But he's like, and he was surprised by it too. He's like, I don't even care about a lot of that stuff. Like, and he was surprised. Like, I don't know why, but it came out of him.
Right.
I didn't tell him to
Right.
put it in there. It came through that exploration process.
Love it.
Now, here's what happens with most people. Now, I think just having any kind of vision, even if it's surface, is better than not having it. Here's the problem. Even if somebody has a vision board, they actually start with goal setting. They don't start with a vision. They start with goal setting. And goals, if you have goals, it's better than not having goals. So that's one step up, and definitely have goals. When people create goals, even if they had, because they have something slapped on a vision board, but that's more of a goal than it is a vision. So what they do is they kind of work towards that, but halfway through or at the end of it, either they will give up on it because it seems too difficult in the process, or they will get there and they'll be like, I don't know if I care about this.
Yeah.
But if they
Boom.
had a real vision, when they go towards it, one, they're able to deal with the challenges a lot better. Two, when they're going in that process, they're growing in the process. And three, when they get there, they realize they got something incredibly valuable in this process. It might not be the thing itself, but the person that they became in the process became
Yeah.
very important. So what I do is I get them to create a deeper vision for themselves, write it out, visualize it, and build a strategy around it. And I come from an engineering background. I don't think just because you build a vision doesn't mean it's going to translate normally. Like there has to be a practical process around it. Just because you built it, it inspires you, it connects with you, it emotionally, it motivates you. But we know that motivation doesn't last long. It has a half-life. You need to build a practical strategic process for you to put it into action and consistently build it out. That's where the strategic goal setting comes in. And then you need to build a tribe. That's where communicating your vision comes in, where you're getting feedback, positive feedback, you're understanding, you're creating a common vision with other people to move it forward. That could be your family, team members, business partners, whoever they might be. But without that process, you're going to probably fall into a goal setting process, and you're going to set a bunch of goals, spend 10 years, and then at the end of it, ask yourself, why the hell did I do that?
Yeah. I love about a vision. I set goals my whole life, but I love the distinction of a vision versus goals. And for me, it's very simple. And it's like a vision is a state of being. A vision is the life you want to live and the person you want to become, and it's connected to a why. Like, is this coming from me, or is this coming from society? Like the guy you're talking about, is his first vision board probably came from what other people thought he should have, what his coaches, teachers, preachers, parents, whoever was in his life or society said, you need to have a big car and a big house. And those things in of themselves aren't bad, but the idea is it didn't come from him. It came from somewhere else. It didn't come from his true desires. And then you said he created a vision that was more authentic to him, and there was a lot of people in it. And so it's like that vision finally came from who he was, and he sat down and tried to figure out who he is and what he truly wants and desires and why. I think it's such a crucial piece of the vision is like, why? What does that do for you? Why? Is that coming from you or coming? Because that will help you decide, is this coming from me or coming from what other people think? And then having the goals under that. So I like what you said about the vision, the goals, the structured goals, the community to help you get there. I love that. And I would add like the habits, high performance habits that you do each day to make that a reality. So I love that.
And again, once something is important to you and you see that as your path, and you see that as the only path, and like we live in a world, there's so many distractions. It's crazy how anybody functions, to be honest, including me. Because I think it was I have his book, Jim Quick, in his book Limitless. I think he talks about this. Is like we're exposed to more information in a day versus somebody, and we have more information coming into our mind in a day versus a lifetime for somebody in the Middle Ages. A lifetime. Now look at the how we don't even understand how our mind would even process stuff like that. We can't comprehend it. We're beginning to understand like the overload of that on our system. And it's not just information in terms of data, but it's emotional information around politics, around family challenges, drama, struggles every day. How, and then what do people do on the marketing side? They will give you all sorts of emotional things to think about. These are human, like they overload our system. So in a world like that, if you're going out there and just like, I'm going to say yes to this, this, and this, and this, everything, and you don't know why this is aligned with you, mind you, if you're young and you're just starting out, go experiment, try different things. But as you start to kind of get in the rhythm of, you know what, I want to build a path forward. As soon as you make a decision, it cannot be, let me try everything. It has to be that, you know what, I need to find out what matters to me deep down. I need to find out what my path is going to be. And once you figure out that vision, everything needs to flow out of that. That means that will teach you to make hard decisions. And those hard decisions show up in the form of, I need to create boundaries. I need to figure out a system to do this on a consistent basis. That's where habits come in. Because I have such an urgency, such a necessity around this to do this, because it's connected to something that's deeply important to me, I'm going to create a habit system You might not call it that, but you will wake up every day and do that thing because it's important to you. You will start to build things that will help you. You start to say no to a lot of stuff that doesn't matter to you anymore because you know what matters to you. You become very focused on the things that matter. And in
Mhm.
fact, the way I make a differentiation on vision, you explained it too. And this is very unique to, as far as we understand it, this is unique to human beings, where we're able to see a world that looks just as real in a distance somewhere. We are able to see a version of ourselves that's not even here, but it looks just as real to us as us in the mirror. And this is why I think vision is so powerful, is that when you're able to see that world and experience it in your mind, when you're able to see a version of you that's another level,
Dimension.
like, that's real. That's just as real as in front of me. And to me, that's how it was. No matter how challenging my path was, I'm like, that's just a matter of time. I already see it. I already can experience it. I already feel it in my core. So
Mm-hmm.
what's stopping me? The only thing that's stopping me is my own crap. And so it also teaches you to start to build habits that align with that vision. But if you don't have a core vision to go towards and a strategy to go towards that, you will always go towards one distraction after another distraction. In fact, most of my clients, they're jumping from one opportunity to the next opportunity. Why? Because they're mimicking other people's success, and other people's success won't necessarily work for you. You can be inspired by them, but you need to find your path.
Yeah. Yeah. Boom. Mic drop, man.
All right, where's my mic?
Man. Yeah. So we're talking about the power of a vision. And I want to just second that too, because, and then I want to ask you a personal question too, to kind of tie this back. But it's like with the vision, there's so many things that come from it. Just creating it is like you go through a process of growing, just creating the vision. Just that in and of itself of making it and like taking time to figure out what you want in all these areas of life, why you want it, who is this person you become, the values you have, the character traits, the habits you're going to develop. You don't have to do it all now, right? But the person you're becoming, just the process of that is such a self-discovery process that you're like,
Mhm.
wow, just creating a vision in the right way is a process that gives you a lot, just creating it. And then it's a North Star that pulls you forward out of uncertain times, that pulls you away from negative belief systems, feeling stuck, feeling directionless, feeling like you don't know what the next 4 years are, or the next whatever years are. Like you don't know what's next, pulling you forward. And even if you're somebody that's excited about the next 4 years, it's going to pull you to greatness, pull you to an extraordinary level, you know? And so it's so important. People don't realize how it's not just a fun thing to have. Like a vision is a necessity for living your best life, for being happy, for being fulfilled, for having success in something you love to do. It's a necessity. And that's such a powerful tool. And you've talked about community, you've talked about habits, you've talked about vision here, and a powerful process that you're developing and helping people with right now, and especially for 2025. And I love that. But I want to ask you, man, reflecting, if you could just see yourself where you are now, back in that moment when you were throwing up and literally blood was coming out and you're like, whoa, something's got to change. Like if you could just like reflect on how much of a badass you are now, how far you've come. If you're looking at yourself at that time, what would you say to yourself? Like what would you be thinking? How would you feel?
Yeah. Uh, well, that's a great question, because when I think about that, that brings tears.
Woo.
But the reason it does is that at that time I was struggling, and I couldn't see two steps in front of me, to be honest, let alone a life ahead. And I was in hell, to be honest. When people talk about hell, there are a lot of people that are in hell right here, and I couldn't see a path forward. What I would say to anybody who's going through a difficult time, who's trying to find a path forward, and I would say is just know that there is, even if you don't see it. Our mind deludes us into thinking that there are only a few possibilities that are in front of you. It deludes us into thinking that we cannot deal with our pain. I could not have imagined what I've become right now. At that time, I could only imagine the next version of it. But I know, looking back at least, is that to that self, what I would tell him is that to give yourself some grace
Wow.
and step back and think, look around you. You've been given a powerful mind and a heart, and no matter what you're going through, there you have a lot of opportunities. You've been blessed with the world. There's a lot of things, no matter what part of the world you live, and the possibilities can be immense if you open up your mind and start using your gifts. And just know that you have gifts, you're just not using them the right way. You have powerful tools within you. You don't need any lottery outside. You don't need anybody to give you any opportunities. What you need to do is step back and take a look at your life. If you're not able to, then go ask for help. Find help. I wish I did more to find help at that time. I didn't know how to find help. I didn't know there was help available. I didn't know where to seek it. Whether that help for you is therapy, whether that help for you is coaching, whether that help for you is talking to a friend, whether that help for you is talking to a spiritual guide, whatever it might be, somebody that you trust, start sharing. And the help might be just pick up a good book. The help might be is just go towards something. If you're not able to see it, get somebody else to help you start questioning what's happening. Because a lot of people, one of the reasons why they're not able to go deeper is because they haven't been given the tools. Unfortunately, and I got out of school after decades of trying to get an education to be to live out in the world. I asked myself, well, why wasn't there any training around the financial world?
Oh my God.
Why
Me
wasn't
too.
there any training around knowing myself better?
Yeah.
Why wasn't there any training on how to be in a better relationship? Why wasn't there any training around being a parent? Like
Oh my, I'm
the
just kidding.
four things that you need, you don't know how to do. But let me teach you a few fractions that might help you out. Fractions help. Math helps. But the core things that are supposed to be taught are completely missed in our education
Yeah.
system, and our parents are busy trying to make a living. Nobody knows what the fuck is going on. Sorry for the language. But
All
but
good.
then the same people will teach you as a counselor, as a guide, as a parent. They will tell you, be careful about the world you go into. But you don't even know what the hell's going on out in the world. How can you
Yeah.
teach me?
Right. Got the wrong people giving you advice. Yeah. Wow, man. Whoa. That is so beautiful what you shared right there. The motion to be able to speak back to him and tell him those things. That's really powerful. And anybody out there listening, that's for you too. Wherever you are in your unique journey of life, I think there's also one thing that comes to my mind is competence. I never knew. There's just things like you mentioned, finances, relationships, a vision for your future was never taught either. And it's like once I realized that all these things were solvable, all of them, all of them are solvable. They require competence in some area, meaning you're gaining knowledge, you're gaining an understanding. Once you have an understanding and a wrap around these things, around your problem, what it is, and then what do you need to do to learn, to grow, to go towards the goal you have, the vision you have, that level of competence is what gives you confidence to be able to live your best life. You know, it's like competence is the door to confidence, which confidence is then in the door to fulfillment and living your best version and being your best self. And so it's like when we can bring competence back into this and be like, okay, like in that situation where you're feeling stuck, what do I need to learn? How do I need to grow? Because it's if this problem is solvable, what is it that I need to learn? If like anything in the universe is possible, if anything is solvable, like there's all these resources. I mean, good God, we have this phone at the base of our fingertips. We get all the information at the speed of light. I mean, guys, you know, so we have to remember, back away from the emotions a little bit and be like, okay, what do I need to learn to become, either go from stuck to just good, or from good to great, or from great to extraordinary, joyful, abundant, blissful. Think about it that way. It gives you options. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would just add one thing to that. I like Alex Hermosi's model. Just to add to what you're saying, there's
Yeah.
if you can think of two things. One is, and we've talked about the other thing. One is competency that you said, which is skill sets. You need
Yeah.
everything is trainable. Like if you really
Right.
want to develop something, why? Because you have an incredibly powerful mind that can
Yeah.
learn almost anything. Some things you will learn better than others, but you can learn almost anything. And then the other side is beliefs, which we talked about.
Yep.
Usually it's your beliefs that stop you from thinking that you can do something or not, and we're giving you a belief here that if you've gotten any belief is that you can pretty much solve anything, you can do anything if you put your mind to it, if you are actually open in building skill set. And skill sets and mastery take time, effort, energy, and support.
Mm.
So
Yes.
anything you want to develop, time, energy, support,
Yes.
effort, that will be a part of it. And
Yep.
I like Brendan's quote around this is when you knock on the door of opportunity, don't be surprised that work answers. You're going to have to do the work
Yes.
and put in the time.
Yes.
But the problem is that most of our beliefs stop us. And this is where you need some kind of guidance, a community, a coach that challenge those beliefs. Most people
Yeah.
believe all sorts of crap that doesn't support them to move forward. And so
Mm-hmm.
mentally, they stop themselves from doing things. That happens with athletes, as you know. I mean, we have so many amazing stories of athletes who didn't believe that something is possible, but then one person came in, is like, you know what, it's possible. Let me try this out. Let me experiment with
Yep.
this. Let me find a
4 minute
solution.
mile.
4 minute mile, and all of a sudden everybody else followed along.
Yeah.
Why? Because he just opened up a new belief. And so
Yeah.
those two things work hand in hand. You could have the skill sets, but if you don't have the right beliefs, you won't move forward. If you have the right beliefs, you don't have the skill sets, you cannot move forward because you need to still develop those skill sets.
Powerful, man. Thank you so much for that. And I have just a few more quick questions. And as coaches, we always, we do like a takeaway, like, okay, wow, powerful emotions conversation we just had here. What, Faisal, what do you feel like is your takeaway from our conversation today that, maybe can impact other people and can impact you? And what would be like your takeaway?
I think the takeaway is that, and this is why I think it's so powerful to have these conversations, that our story matters. It might not matter to others, but it needs to matter to you. At the least, it needs to matter to you. But over time, it needs to matter to other people too, because your story helps you create a path forward if you understand it the right way. Most people have weird associations with their story. They look
Yeah.
at their past, they see a life where it's all sorts of things that have been thrown towards you that you have no control over. And that's how I looked at my story in the past. I felt like a victim a lot of times. I felt like I couldn't do something. I felt like I was not given the advantages I needed. But then over time, as you go through your journey and you start to look at it in reflection and you start to see elements of it, you see that even the disadvantages that you thought were disadvantages, they were strengths hiding right
Yeah.
in plain sight. And so, for anybody listening to this, you have a powerful story that you haven't actually uncovered. This is why you feel stuck. A huge part of my work with
Oof.
people is I want them to know what their story is and associate something powerful, because their story determines the path to their purpose and vision and future. Without that story, it's very hard to move forward. Your past makes a big difference, and most people have weird unhealthy associations with their own story. And this is why they look down on themselves, on others, in the world. They think the world is this place that's out there to get them. I don't think that's the case. Yes, there's danger in the world, there's challenges. If it wasn't, their life will be really boring. But you are also incredibly powerful that you haven't figured out yet.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
connected to your story, and that's connected to my story and your story, Eric. And that's why we've grown, because we're curious about our own story. We're always learning, we're always growing. That's why we go on a journey. And if I were to give you any identity, and I took that identity on, be a seeker. Try to understand yourself, try to understand the world around you, try to understand other people. You'll start to see a very different world.
Wow. And I want to, in a moment, ask, or just kind of have people where they can find you. I like to say the pin, where's your pin on the internet? But I have one more question before that. And I always ask this to everybody that I have on as a guest, because it's fun. And it also helps us kind of conclude the conversation. But it's just kind of, if you want to, close your eyes, and anybody listening can do that too. And fast forward to the future to the end of your life, whenever it is, whether you're laying on a deathbed, whether you're, cremated, whether, well, I guess it'd be before that. At some point, you are about to die. You're really at the end point of your life. And you look back and you see, the way that you lived. And if you could fast forward to that moment, what would be 2 to 3 things, whether they're philosophies you lived by, ways of living, goals you accomplished? What would be 2 to 3 things that would allow you at that moment of death to pass away with peace, to pass away with fulfillment, to go to the next life with peace, fulfillment, joy, abundance? What would be 2 to 3 things that you would do for that to happen, Faisal?
And that was a vision, by the way. So if somebody did that, that was a demonstration of how you come up with a vision. So I've thought about this a lot, and I actually have created a vision for my whole life, all the way to the time of my death.
Amazing.
But to me, one thing was really powerful was that, and what I said was that I had to realize in my own journey and struggles is that my life matters. Other people around me matter. The world matters. A lot of people have gone to this point where they think nothing matters and everything is meaningless, and things are random. This is a very new, like in terms of human story, this is not longer than 20th century. This was 20th century philosophers in relation to it was the materialistic science that took us in this direction, and the materialistic philosophers that took us in this direction. They meant well, but what they did was they created a path where people lost sight of purpose, lost sight of meaning, lost sight of who they were, and people became like this dust floating around. That's not how the human mind works. The more we're learning about human mind, the more we understand that it needs a structure. It needs a way to look to the future to understand what it is. As much as people talk about presence, I haven't figured yet, outside of me sitting on top of a mountain, meditating every day, dealing with all my thoughts, all my emotions, and releasing all of that stuff, which most people don't have the capacity or the time or the energy, or they don't even want a life like that, aesthetic life like that. Outside of that, the only way I've found to create peace is to make sense of your past and make peace with it, and make sense of your future, and give your mind the tools and the awareness so it leaves you the hell alone. Then you can live most of your life in the present and just be rather than constantly be worried about the future and feeling guilty about your past. And so what I want to pass on, especially with my example, I want to let people know is that, you know what, you can live a life no matter what challenges you're going through, no matter what you're going through. You can be a joy right now. This week, and I was kind of sharing that with my kids too. It was funny, my older daughter's response. So I actually threw my back up this week. I was lifting something, trying to save my finger. I forgot about my back. I bent it the wrong way. It destroyed the muscle.
Oof.
I couldn't walk for 2 days. I was barely walking.
Oh man.
And it took about 4 or 5 days to recover. I still have pain, but I have a lot more mobility now. So my older daughter was asking 2 days after. I was like moving around like this and like tilting and lying down. I couldn't play with them. They're like, "Mama, are you okay?" Like, how are you? I'm like, I'm in a lot of pain, but I'm still happy.
Wow.
So I said that, and she looked at me. She's like, okay. She gave me a weird expression, but really that's what I wanted. That's
wow.
Pain is a fact of life. Challenges are a fact of life. Problems are like, without that, life will be very boring and very meaningless. But then suffering is a choice. We all suffer mostly because of our own mind, not because of circumstances, not because of other people. And when we begin to be open to a life where there's meaning, there's purpose, there's joy, there's excitement, and we begin to go on a journey of curiosity, things can change. And I'm hoping that with my example, I'm communicating that every day to the people around me. And I feel like I have. So that's why most of the time I feel at peace. Even if I go tonight, like it's the end of my life, I feel like I've passed on my message to whatever degree that I can.
Yeah.
Even if it was to one person. I
don't go anywhere, man.
If I go, I go. But like I don't have these goals of billions of people I need to impact. And
Yeah.
if it does, great. If it doesn't, you know what? I'm at peace because I did my part.
Beautiful.
And like I said, if I leave today or in 50 years, to me, it's all the same. If I'm here, I'm grateful, I'm excited, I'll show up and I'll do the work. But if I go, I go. It's not the end of the world.
Wow. So I heard in there, you know, like pain is a fact of life, but suffering is a choice. And I love that. And you said you can live joy in the now. You can live it now. And then like know your story, you know, heal some things from the past, but don't let the future, make sure you're focused on a vision, but don't let the future like worry you all the time. Like do the work. I want to add that in, like do the work of like, where am I going so that you can live in the present, you know, and you've helped me with that. And I just want to say one more thing, Faisal, and then people can like figure out where to find you. But yeah, man, I just want to say I appreciate you so much for helping my life and my coaching journey. I feel like you're a pretty, I'm getting emotional too. Pretty important person in my life. So I just want to, yeah, it hasn't been that long, a year now or something like that. But I mean, we met for the first time in LA and I just felt like you were Zen Buddha giving me such wisdom. And we were just laughing and having a good time at Brendan Burchard's, you know, event. And I really appreciate you, man. And
Thank you.
I really mean that. So you've already helped me so much. So I really appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate that, and
Yeah.
that brings me a lot of joy. It's a huge part of what I do.
Seriously.
The work that I do is a part of. I look at it as a part of my purpose, my calling. So that means a lot. Thank you, and then I'm happy I'm able to serve, and you get to go serve a lot of people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, man. So last thing, where can people find you? Or, you know, I know you got the thing coming up in 2025. Where can people find you? Where's your pin on the internet so they can work with you or learn more about you?
The main channel is my website. If people see my name on the screen, it's just literally my name, FaisalEnsaun.com.
Okay.
Or if they just Google that, they will see all my stuff,
Yeah.
all my podcast channels. You can go to my website. You can book a call with me. There's a freebie there, like a PDF that will help you kind of walk you through the process. If you're not in a place to hire anybody, that will walk you through a process. There are trainings and there are questions in there. So in a sense, it's like a coach in a PDF. You can go through it to help you discover what you want to do. And then if at some point, if you feel like you need support, you can join one of my workshops. I often do free workshops pretty much every other month, every 6 weeks or so. And I usually have something going on, but you can find out, you will see me in the online world. I'm fairly active.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it. All right, man. Great conversation. You guys out there, live your full potential life. Do not settle. Full potential or nothing. Thank you so much, Faisal.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.
Peace. Do not settle for a life that does not belong to you. Uncover and activate your fullest potential in this lifetime. Live your greatest life experience.
This is the Full Potential Living Podcast with Coach